Good morning and happy Tuesday 10 at 10. I'm your host and baker influencer, Richard Charpentier. I'm a baker scientist and a master baker, and every week we get together to answer questions that were sent from you, the bakers. So let's get started with our first question of the day. Is there an enzyme to increase water absorption? There's no, real enzymes you can go in based on what I know, that you can go buy to add to a bread flour or baked product that will increase your water absorption. Because think about it, enzymes tend to either work with substrate, so they would have to work with something within your flour to keep on increasing your water absorption, meaning as you do that, your dough will get drier. But on the other hand, what can you do to increase the water absorption of your bread products? You can, ensure that pentosan that are available in flour have a tendency to increase or absorb 10 times their weight in flour. So most flour that you get contain between 1 to 2% of naturally occurring pentosan in your flour, which will help. Or people will also add vital wheat gluten or different fiber type of ingredients that will absorb more water. So if you want to increase your absorption or look at flour quality, with higher water absorption, but often there is a certain limit. And if you want to increase, your water absorption within your product, you have to look at other ingredients that would be able to help you out. So I hope it helps. So now for our second question, someone wants guidance on the frozen dough process for sandwich bread and buns. So frozen dough is a different process. If you're setting it up, I recommend hiring a third-party consultant that has experience with frozen dough manufacturing and how to properly set it up. But quite often is keeping your dough temperature around 60 degrees. You do not want to activate the yeast that is in there, and you want to make sure you have enough yeast into your product, and also being able to freeze rapidly, which is the key. So we're talking about an entire different process. We're talking about equipment. We're talking about conditioning the temperature of the room, and all of those will make a big difference if you want to be creating consistent quality frozen dough product. And I recommend doing that. If you try to do it within your own bakery and say, hey, I have a demand and it's going to work, it might work, but as you're scaling it up, you will see issues in consistency, and the end user of the frozen dough will have a lot of issues, with proofing and the volume and the quality and the color of the product. So there's a lot that goes into it. Remember, taking a frozen piece of dough, which has the water, hydrated starch and protein with the yeast and everything, and has to stay, in a frozen state for so many, months at a time. And that's where it requires a lot more science and chemistry behind it. And that's why the first point, hire a third-party consultant that will help you with your project. But excellent question, and good luck on your search. Our third question, someone wants to explain, can you please explain why some people use 3 grams and other 3.2 grams for sedimentation test? So for those not aware, a sedimentation test is a physicochemical test that helps provide information on the baking quality of the flour you're using. and it is usually based on suspending the flour in a mixture of alcohol and acid solution that will make the flour particles to sediment. And then they measure the amount, and it's basically an indicator. It's very different than the rheological test like the Farinograph or the alveograph, that is commonly used in the industry. And if you look at the Bakerpedia profile, it mentions a 4 gram to be used for the sedimentation test. That I don't have an answer whether or not 3 grams, 3.2, I'm reading 4 grams of what's the right amount of flour to be used for your sedimentation test. I would do a little more research or ask someone who has more experience and knowledge around the sedimentation test. But feel free to go look at the free resources on Bakerpedia on sedimentation test. It's great source for learning and learn a little more. So, but thank you for sending your question. Now for our last question of the day, we have a question regarding listeria, and someone wants to know if there is a slight chance of listeria in a raw cookie dough. Does baking provide a kill step? Yes, baking provides a kill step, but if once you do have listeria, I'm a baker by trade and not a microbiologist, I would not take any risk because it's contamination. So if people are handling the cookies and putting it on trays or racks and anything being touched, we're talking about a germ that can spread. So I would be very cautious of doing that, because maybe the cookies after the baking process will be safe, but contamination of things that you cannot see is a high risk. And according to the CDC, listeria contamination is the 3rd leading cause of food poisoning death in America. So not something to take lightly and to say, oh, I can save it. If you get a manufacturer to say, hey, you might have listeria, destroy the lot and do not take chances. But again, it's only recommendations, for you to do with your products. But that is it for today. Thank you very much for joining us on Tuesday, 10 at 10, and I will see you next week. Happy baking. Thank you.